Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Delighted today to be joined by Ian Scott and Steve Lister. So Ian is a retail consultant and observer of retail trends, and Steve is a global retail innovator and influencer. Hi guys, how you doing?
I'm very well, thanks. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Good. So Ian, let's start with you. For those that might not be familiar with you, do you want to give us a quick kind of career biog?
Certainly, for the last 20 years, I've been working in and around retail, mostly on the creative and supply side. So I've worked with a number of retail design agencies and got involved in a bit of shopper behavior work as well. And until July, I was working for TAG, one of the global production agencies, which gave me the opportunity to travel the world and observe shopping habits and store design firsthand as well. I'm now a consultant since July, carrying on with the same sort of activities.
Brilliant. And Steve, same for you?
Actually, very similar to Ian, to be honest with you. I've been in the industry for about 20 years. My background pretty much is in retail innovation and sustainability. That's where I've been focused. The last 7 years, I was the head of retail innovation and retail performance for Konica Minolta Marketing Services, which is now Indicia worldwide. And I was in charge of looking after the retail clients like Unilever across 29 countries, Heineken 19, Stanley Black & Decker, etc. And really that was to really look at their client service teams and deliver really new innovations and sustainability. Currently, I'm the head of sustainability for Popeye, the Point of Purchase Association across UK and Ireland, and also have my own retail consultancy where I advise global brands and retailers on the future of retail and sustainability in retail.
Brilliant. So a wealth of experience between us all, which is good. So looking forward to a good conversation today. Yeah. And we're going to focus on, I suppose, one question, which maybe leads to another one. So what does the physical retail have to do to bounce back? So we're halfway through lockdown Mark 2, if that's what you want to call it. And I think the thinking is going towards, does that mean we're going to have really our first Cyber Christmas? I think we've been edging there with things like Cyber Monday, Black Friday, but clearly the world's been a really strange place in the last 9 months. So if we start with you, Ian, I know you guys have both do lots of store tours, look at new concepts, look at new designs. What kind of things do you see retailers now starting to think about, maybe born out of lockdown 1 or just as part of their strategic plans anyway, to pull footfall back in, to make people really enjoy the experience in store and spend more rather than default to online?
I think one of the biggest challenges that we saw with the first lockdown is when the non-essential stores started to reopen in June, there was a huge amount of communication around safety and PPE. And one of the things I was a little concerned about was that most of the spend was going on safety communication. And a lot of the brands were not then trying to evolve the store. So the challenge was they were reassuring shoppers it was safe to come in, but when they entered the store, there wasn't so much to actually wow them and get them excited about coming in the first place. And I think both Steve and I have found when we've gone around looking at stores, we've spoken to store managers, and what they're saying is that while footfall is down, the conversion and buying rates are very high, which suggests that browsers are not bothering to come into stores, whereas serious shoppers are. So they're coming on proper, genuine missions, and will go through that process to actually buy something they want to buy. So I think one of the biggest challenges is that physical retail has to become incredibly relevant and engaging for shoppers. Those that are coming in, they need to be wowed. And also what we're seeing is this massive sort of leap towards online, which was inevitable during lockdown, has challenged brands to evolve their digital offer. But likewise, the physical offer needs to evolve in the same way, and it needs to properly work together. You know, everyone in the marketing and retail trade has been referring to the phrase omnichannel for a long time. Personally, I hate the phrase because it's not relevant to customers. Customers never use the phrase omnichannel. They'll just pick up the phone, visit a website, go to a store, click and collect. And all they want is accessibility to all of the channels so that they can utilize them when they want to. So we're going to see a very fast evolution of how a physical store properly and seamlessly networks into that online offer that has now grown. And as a result, a lot of what the physical store needs to do is less about having a product on a shelf, which is still important, bearing in mind that before lockdown, 83% of retail sales we're in a physical store, but it needs to be more about how it combines in the way that shoppers will use their phone and websites and other digital channels to interact with it. So that's where I see the real growth and the challenge now.
Yeah, omni-channel is a really overused word. I'm not really sure if anybody's actually joined it. Ultimately, the customer's the channel and where they choose to shop. You've got to fulfill it from whichever angle and whichever way they want to purchase, bring it back, browse, whatever. Steve, anything to add to that in terms of opening statements?
Yeah, I agree with both of what you said there. You know, I don't use the word omni-channel because omni-channel is only for agencies and brands to use as an internal term. How have you ever heard your mum, your dad, or your friend use the word, I'm going to go an omni-channel Christmas this year? You know, it just doesn't happen. But I agree what Ian says. Again, you know, we've been very lucky enough that we can be going out and viewing these stores and seeing the changes. And we've sort of acted, and what's been really good, we've had a huge response to these retail tours because we're sort of acting as the eyes and ears for a lot of people in brands and retailers around the world who actually can't get out. And we're very fortunate that we can. And we obviously adhere to those different things, you know, and different restrictions. But we've seen lots of changes. Yeah, there is undoubtedly, you know, I'm going to use that word once. This year is actually going to be an omni-channel Christmas because customers are going to look at all the different ways they're going to fulfill their spending needs this year. And it is going to be spread across all retail touch points, whether it is online, whether it is, you know, click and collect, whether it is they're just dropping into store to just verify something. And we know that stores have changed from being places to purchase to basically validation points. We just know that someone wants to go in and quickly check something. Is it the right material? Is it the right spec? And then they'll probably then go home and order it online. Maybe they will look at prices, etc. But unfortunately, as the world opens up again for pre-Christmas, and obviously this will be going around the world. I mean, in the UK, we're opening up at the beginning of December. What's going to happen with shopping habits in December? Are we all going to rush out? Are we all going to fill stores up with hundreds and thousands of people? I just don't think it's going to happen. I think we're going to open things back up again, and there's going to be a very muted, very considered approach to Christmas because people will still be worried about safety. They will be worried about less spending because that's going to impact us. There'll probably be fewer trips to store, but maybe they'll be spending more. And Ian made a really good point of when we have done some of these tours, the actual owners in these stores have said to us, yeah, it's more considered. You know, people are coming in, there's less customers, but we're over budget. And you know what? That is good news. And that's how I think this Christmas will be.
Just picking up on a few points there, there's some concern I've been reading on, you know, the retail press and LinkedIn, etc., that some organisations haven't really got the scale to deliver the online operation with the Christmas peak. So we may end up in a world where, like you say, we go in, we browse, we look at the material, go home and order it online, but there's potential car crash disappointment ahead where people don't get their deliveries in time for Christmas.
Oh, absolutely. We're already hearing that people are placing orders for groceries now online and they're 75th in the queue. And you just think, if it's now, what's it going to be like in the real peak period in the 2-3 weeks running up to Christmas? I do agree. I think there are going to be some very disappointed people. However, a lot of the insights are actually showing us that people are actually shopping earlier. People are actually doing it right now as we speak. People are at home ordering and getting things ready for Christmas right now. So hopefully that spend will not be condensed in the last few weeks of Christmas, you know, leading up to Christmas like it has done for many, many years.
I think one of the few benefits of this second lockdown is we sort of understand what's involved because we've been through it before. Simon and I were just briefly talking about that before we went on air, you know, that it's not quite as bad. I mean, for example, I was in a B&Q store yesterday and I said to them, it's a new store, and I said, so how are you going to section off the non-essential areas? You know, it's one of the issues that Tesco got a lot of flack for a few weeks ago in Wales, where they were sectioning off the non-essential areas. And he said, well, actually, we've been told to keep the whole store open. So, yes. You know, and I was trying to buy paint in the first lockdown because I just moved house and it was impossible, whereas now it is open. So there are certain aspects, I mean, it's only one microcosm, but there are certain aspects where it's not quite the same. I think behaviourally we're used to it. You hope that the savvy retailers will have adjusted their online after the massive impact back in March when some of the websites were just drowned with footfall on orders that they couldn't cope. So you hope that they've evolved and made it a little slicker. And coming back to what Steve was saying as well, is if we do open everything up again on the 2nd of December, and I'm not convinced we will, bearing in mind that they've extended furlough to March, which is a very specific time frame. And I have heard that the Office of National Statistics are modelling scenarios around lockdown lasting till March. So this is going to be a real challenge. I'm hoping a lot of brands are, fitting out their Christmas windows and getting their Christmas offer ready to open 2nd of December. And again, one of the few benefits of this lockdown is they now have several weeks to get their stores ready, assuming that they will open on the 2nd of December. But as you say, the challenge you have is the whole of Christmas physical shopping is now 3 weeks. And it's normally busy, November it starts to build up anyway. But what you've got is this condensed approach, which will squeeze the physical shopping into a smaller space. But as Steve alluded to, who wants to be in a busy store at the moment? So physical retail has been hit both ways. People will be scared to go in a condensed lead up. Yeah. So the online it has to be critical. So this will show where brands are thinking sensibly about Christmas and gearing up for online, because there will be huge amounts online, and there is a danger that some presents won't arrive in time as well. But we've had 7 months of preparing for this, certainly 7 months to adjust how online operates and getting the logistics in place as well. So I do worry for brands that aren't ready for this, because they've had a lot of warning in advance all year.
And I don't know about you both. If I buy online, I always feel like I'm missing out. There is something magical about going and walking around a shop, having a browse, finding something unexpected, maybe speaking to a great colleague as well. For me, it's a lot more binary online. I go to the section I'm looking at, I'll find the, Christmas jumper or whatever, and then I'll buy it. I lose that browse and treasure hunt.
Absolutely. I mean, Amazon grew because it leveraged convenience and availability. What it didn't do is leverage brand experience and personal contact. Yeah. So many people forget about the behavioral aspect of this. Humans are social creatures. How many of us have gone shopping for the day without a single product in mind? It's just, let's go out and have a look. It's how places like Westfield have leveraged big shopping centres quite well, because there'll be a cinema and there'll be restaurants and there'll be coffee shops, and they want you to come and spend the day. I saw Westfield did a post 6 months ago about what the shopping mall will look like in 10 years' time, and it's a leisure centre that happens to include shops. And it's trying to tap into that social aspect. And I do worry when so many people just sort of say, the new normal, we're all going to be shopping online now. And I think that's utter rubbish. And I posted just this week an article with Mark Ritson, who is a no-nonsense marketing genius. And he very eloquently and bluntly, with huge smatterings of Anglo-Saxon, says this is rubbish. And he doesn't use the word rubbish. Because behaviorally, we have seen historically, while COVID is unique, having recessions and pressures on our spending have been going, there's a 20, 30-year cycle for recessions. We see people reverting back. People will come back to stores. We've seen it in China and Asia that physical stores have seen a big return of footfall. And there's a wonderful phrase that's been coined in China, which is the revenge shopper. These are people going, finally, I can now get out. And with relish, they rush back to restaurants and shops and all these places that have been restricted because they need to get their fill. And that's a socially driven aspect, which is behavioral. And people often forget that. Remember how we behave as humans before you just say we're all going to be digital and online and isolated now, because it just doesn't happen like that.
And we've seen that. I mean, if you take a look at some of the figures that we've seen coming out of, if we look at the pandemic, of course it's accelerated the shift towards online shopping. We all know that. We all feel it because we all do it. But we know, like Ian said, these brands and retailers have to future-proof themselves. They've got to, because they know that there's that relentless shift towards it. And if you look at the figures, if we just take a figure for the UK, now the UK absolutely was leading the world on online purchasing and online shopping. Back in August 2015, it was about 11.5% of sales. We've just seen figures for back end of August saying it's over 26% now. Now, is that going to plateau? Probably will do, because like Ian said, and like Mark Ritson said, I loved his word. He said consumers will snap back into old habits. And there's a lots of consumer behaviorist, consultants saying, habits will be broken after 66 days, and then it takes another 66 days to reestablish, new habits. Do you know what? I think a lot of people are fickle, and do you know what they will, like Ian said, the revenge shopper will come back. We want to get out. We want to buy something for Christmas. We want to get that little bit of a buzz. But I do think that, unfortunately, the domination of Amazon will continue to dominate us, and will continue to focus people to think, just I'll just order it online. And then they'll just do their top-up shops and maybe their higher-end spend. But, the average things that they're going to buy for Christmas, they will just do it online.
I do wonder as well if we will see a situation where some people will assume the shops will be quiet and we might get a boost in footfall. I mean, I must admit myself, the thought of walking into a busy shop in the middle of December fills me with horror. Yes. But I have kids, so I have to do it. I may well go and visit shops this year because I think they'll be quieter because no one else will be going in. So there's a weird sort of reverse psychology there where I might think it will be a more appealing physical shop this year because of the reduced footfall, which may ironically boost footfall.
And do you think that the government will relax Sunday trading? It seems like an obvious one. It's kind of a bit historic, and I don't really know why we still allow to it. And actually,
it's a religious pressure, isn't it? I think it's certainly not a commercial one.
So that's one option. You could trade longer hours. I mean, supermarkets have been doing 24 hours over Christmas before, but actually this might be a year where others jump on board because you go shopping late at night because there's few people around. So you spread the demand over a longer period. Clearly there's commercial impact because you've got to keep the lights on, pay the colleagues and all that kind of stuff. But
the biggest cost is setting the store up in the first place. The running of it pales into insignificance. So, I mean, and the other interesting thing there is temporary work there because you'll need to increase, you need to add another shift of staff, at least one, possibly two shifts for some stores to run 24 hours. So there's a potential to do that. I mean, I do think that Boris will relax certain restrictions around Christmas, with the lockdown and minimizing movement and interaction. He may relax it for the week over Christmas because of the sheer popular pressure. Mm-hmm. But he has made a lot of decisions around commercial viability, not health. He's ignored his health advisors in certain situations to provide support for industry. And I think he may well realize that, Christmas is what bails out so many businesses. It's not called the golden quarter for no reason. So I think there may well be some considerations, around it. So, I would expect a few concessions around Christmas.
The other thing we've seen is lots of organisations move quite quickly in first lockdown to fulfil from store. So actually, if you've already got colleagues in working night shifts to fulfil from store for click and collect for Christmas demand, why wouldn't you keep the doors open? So I think the smart ones will be there anyway, if that makes sense.
Well, yes, it's funny you should say that because yesterday I did a retail tour of the new Asda revamped concept up in Minworth in the West Midlands. And that's pretty impressive, where Asda are now focusing on, Ian was saying about creating themselves into sort of like more leisure destinations, where now you're seeing these large grocery brands now looking to create mini malls inside there. So yesterday I visited because I wanted to see they're opening a new home and baby section, which is interesting. So they're focusing on that. But what was really interesting was they're building a McDonald's in there. They've just opened a massive Costa Coffee inside the Asda. But then they've got a new street food section where there's sushi, there's Bam Tuk Asian street food, there's fresh pizzas, there's food to go. So all of a sudden, there's a Max Spillman in there as well. There's a Decathlon sports shop in it as well. So all of a sudden, you've got a destination store. And very interestingly, you look at someone like Asda looking at that and thinking, do you know what? You could do a majority of your Christmas shopping in there, obviously grocery, but there's also a lot of toys in there, etc. So very, very interesting that they're flexing very quickly. And I think, me and Ian have talked about this a lot. The pandemic has really acted as an accelerant for retail. Mm. Things that people were thinking about doing in years have now been developed in months, and things that they were going to do in months have now been developed in weeks. So for me, certainly, and I'm not talking for Ian, I love his perspective, is I think it's quite exciting as a retail innovator and people who've worked in this sector for a long time to see the speed and the acceleration of some of these retail innovations.
It's one of the most exciting times in retail. Maybe not if you're a legacy retailer with 500 stores and long leases and big rates, but certainly, there will be case studies for decades to come around retail in 2020. And I agree, and what Steve was saying there, they say necessity is the mother of invention. Fearing the end of the world is quite a good motivator too. And we were seeing some, I know, just reading on LinkedIn this morning about a company that was developing AI technology to make click and collect more efficient, where people will stay in cars in the car park and they will all, sort out the efficiency and the slick operation of maximizing throughput of people. And you can sort of see that sort of technology has existed and it suddenly has a focal point. I've spoken to a couple of technology companies where they're analyzing how to target the retail market, looking at the UK. And there's some really clever ideas here that have sort of existed without a reason for focus. So, we're seeing very simple things like queuing technology. Then, as I say, efficiency around click and collect as well. These retail is one of these prime areas where people cannot afford not to invest in making their shop as efficient as possible. So from a retail innovation observation point of view, like Steve and I have, this is really exciting. And we're seeing the companies that are really responding quickly and cleverly to this.
Yesterday, a huge new section was built inside this Asda at Minworth, and it was called Asda to You. And it was the new parcels collections sector of the store. So I went over to it and had a little look, and it was incredible. It was just technology driven. One side of it was where you could return parcels into a drop box with a QR code, and you could just literally QR code it and drop the parcel in for return. It then had a center section where you could go up and type in collection code or your QR code, and the delivery mechanism dropped it and delivered it right into this beautiful sort of like frosted glass area where it just came down and was delivered it for you. But then it also had drop boxes on the right hand side, so where you could go and collect your products from ASOS and other things, where you could then go and collect and return. So that technology, which is really at the forefront of retail, is now being installed into Asda grocery stores. So that, for me, is I look at that and think that's where they're going to create that hub, that reason, that destination to be able to go and pick up and drop off. Oh, and by the way, I'll buy some groceries, my Christmas toy shopping as well.
Covers two things that have been on my mind for a while, actually. So one is collaboration. So I think Next historically have done it really well. So there's some Next that have got Costas in, Paperchase. I think a couple have got car showrooms in randomly. There's a whole Lipsy thing. So I think that they've done it pre-COVID in a more structured way. But all those bits you talk around in terms of overspaced areas where you can put a concession in, you can put a different brand in to drive that. Or as you've seen, I don't know if you've been to the Primark there's the one in Manchester, which has got the coffee shop in from Friends, and the one in Birmingham.
Steve and I were in Birmingham a few weeks ago. We went to visit that store together, and we even had a coffee with Mickey Mouse, didn't we, Steve?
We did it. We were real retail geeks, and you make a really good point there. The Primark in Birmingham is the largest Primark in the world.
Yeah.
Over 5-6 floors. They actually purchased the old shopping centre and converted the whole of this shopping centre into a Primark. So absolutely, but very interesting point here. Let's make this point, because you bring up about Primark. Primark don't have online sales.
No.
So in the lockdown, when the world closed, their sales went from X to nothing. Yeah. So we talk about this whole thing about, online will impact some of these brands. And from what I'm reading in the retail press, Primark are not going to online. So there will be some people that will decide to go online and not. And fashion, well, if I just throw another figure at you, Field Agent did a big report about top online gifts this year. Number one is toys. 43% of respondents said they will be buying all of their toys online. 42% said electronics. And thirdly, said their clothing will be bought online for gifts. So if you look at the top three, toys, electronics and clothing, well, that's pretty much a lot of what people buy anyway for Christmas. So will it shift to online, or like we've said, will it be omni-channel? Of course, it will be spread across different areas.
Yeah, I think there's going to be some really exciting collaborations. And back to the points around driving innovation, we've seen things like slightly pre-lockdown, but again, sped up. So in the hospitality industry, robot vacuum cleaners are kind of part of the norm now, certainly for room cleaning in hotels. There's a whole wave of this nano cleaning technology, which kind of self heals and self cleans, which is, again, pre-COVID, but absolutely on the money. And even this week, speaking to a couple of guys, there's things coming through, robot dispensing. So for pharmacy items, or actually for pop-ups. So a robot can carry, 20,000 plus things in its inventory, and you pop it out and it starts to dispense it. So it is absolutely unfortunate for some people. It's sped up the demise. Unfortunately, I don't think it's caused the demise, but for others, if you're into retail, hospitality, a really exciting time, because there's so much stuff coming through and so much stuff we've not even thought about.
We've seen the rise of the retail robots for many years. We've seen lots of different ways that people are using that automation to do things. We've seen it with even COVID cleaning. There's robots that have got UV, lamps on them, which will go around at night and will cleanse stores. We're seeing in Lowe's in America now, the big DIY chain, there's retail robots that will now pick you up at the front of the store. You type in what you want, or you tell it, and it leads you right to the aisle or the bay what you're looking for. In Milton Keynes, you've got the little automated delivery, vehicles as well. So there will be a continued rise. Will it have an impact on staff levels? Of course it will, unfortunately. But I think it will drive other things as well. I think it will level itself out. But there are some very exciting developments on that whole retail robot side and automation.
The staff level one's interesting. And as you know, we do lots of kind of study work around process and people. I think the smart ones will convert that into focused service time rather than make cuts, because we've been here before in previous recessions and downturns where you cut to the bottom and you keep on cutting, and actually you get to a point where all you're doing is losing sales. You're not actually saving cost. So I think the smart ones, if they remember back maybe 15 years, we got to the bottom quite quickly and people kept going, and it was a really poor shopping experience. So back to our first points, if it's about experience and how it feels in a store and the retail theatre it's been called over the years that people aspire to, you need people to deliver that.
This is one of the key things that comes across all the time. One of the great examples was when everyone offshored their call centres, and you had these atrocious experiences of someone with a very strong Indian accent who could barely speak English, apparently called Kevin, trying to sort out your problems. And there was a massive backlash because it became impersonal. And the banking sector is another one. We know that retail banks are closing a lot of branches because they're very expensive. And the growth of online banking, and everyone has an app on their phone now, reduces the need. But I shudder with horror when you read about a bank that's gone, we now have a proper digitized, physical store, so there's no human interaction. And if you think about it, we do our day-to-day banking on an app. Why do we go into a store? Most people go into a retail branch because the app is not delivered. Either there's a problem or it's something that the app can't deal with.
Yeah.
And I'll go into my branch maybe once a year, but I want to speak to someone. To me, the physical branch is the human interaction point. And so to take people out of that area, I think is fatal. And we're constantly seeing these examples of people cost cutting and dehumanizing interactive points and then learning and coming back again. So you see companies now proudly talking about how their call centers back in the UK. You almost with supermarkets as well, the growth of Tesco's and Sainsbury's, 10, 20 years ago, it was a convenient one-stop shop. So we stopped buying from our local corner butcher and our local baker. That's come full cycle now because everyone loves their local corner baker. You get these cyclical events where you push and dehumanize just a little too far, and you get the backlash because customers want that human interaction. We're having it now with bots and algorithms. They are impersonal, and when they're not quite right, they agitate more and they do more damage to a brand's reputation than the cost saving and convenience that automation delivers. So people have to, and to be fair, there's a fine line because automation is very good, particularly back office area, very, very useful. But at the point of contact with humans, you have to be really careful because you will just agitate consumers, and they are very vocal now with social media and feedback and Trustpilot and other reviews. You cannot afford to agitate your customer because statistically, we will tell 5 times as many people about a bad experience as we do a good one. So you've got to get it balanced right.
And the other day, you're right to bring up the Mark Ritson interview. He was very vocal, and there are absolutely studies that show that brands who double down in these, traumatic times. I won't call this a recession, because what we're in is not a recession, and
Not yet.
and it's not yet. But I do still think that this is going to be completely unprecedented. We can't model things based upon previous recessions, because this is not like a previous recession. So I think that's the one thing that will get us out of it, let's say, because hopefully the furlough scheme around the world, I know there's very different ones around the world, but hopefully a lot of people have been protected from that financially. If you can't find in which the customer wants to, then I've got to be honest with you, shame on you. We've had enough time to change, and people have got to have that, the forefront and the accelerant to say, right, we've got to make a change. If they don't, well, unfortunately, they're going to be the losers in it.
I agree. It's modelling historically doesn't, I think, set you up for any benefit in what's going to happen in the future in this instance. Guys, I think we could carry on talking for ages on this, so let's pause it there. And if people want to pick up further conversations with either you, Ian, or you, Steve, where's the best place for them to find you? If we start with you, Ian.
I would probably say LinkedIn. It's where I'm most visible and where I'm most active as well. So, if anyone wants to sort of engage further, then come and find me as Ian Scott on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to carry on the conversation. There is an email address if people are interested, which is Ian, IAN 608-316 @gmail.com.
Brilliant. And for you, Steve?
Same as Ian, we're finding the LinkedIn platform at the moment is a fantastic platform now for communication. So it's just Steve Lister on LinkedIn. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's just @Stephen Lister. And again, I've got Instagram as well. But, and if anyone wants to email me direct, it's just steve@stevelister.com.
Brilliant. So final question for each of you then. Everyone gets it who comes on the podcast. We'll start with you again, Ian. What's the best bit of business advice you've ever been given?
Probably the best bit of advice I was given was on my Saturday job when I was doing my A-levels, and I worked in an electronics store called Lasky's, and I had a wonderful store manager, the name of Bob Dodd, and he always used to just say, and it's just something I've always had in sales training as well, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth, use them in that proportion. He says, listen to what people want and respond accordingly.
Wise words. And for you, Steve?
Yeah, I had a very good mentor of mine. I've had very lucky enough to have a couple of them in my life. One working for Pepsi and as a vice president role. He always said to me, just think like a customer. So for me, never get into this highfalutin agency world of using words and speak, because that doesn't resonate. Just think like a customer.
Brilliant. Yeah, that brings us back to the word omni-channel. So we'll finish on that point. Really enjoyed this one, guys. Thanks for the chat, and we'll catch up soon.
Thank you very much, Simon. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Simon. Take care.